My key takeaway is don't get distracted by the noise. Don't worry about the acronyms. Good organic search marketing is still good organic search marketing. Keep using the data, being pragmatic, and let's spend more time concentrating on growth than arguing about whether SEO is dead and chatting about acronyms. Hi, I'm Charlie Whitworth, and this is SEO in 2026.
Charlie, what's your number one SEO tip for 2026?
My number one SEO tip for 2026 is to forget the acronyms. Specifically with AI Search and SEO, let's stop focusing on what it's called and focus on what we need to do.
And I guess everyone's asking the question, what is SEO nowadays? Is SEO different compared with what it used to be? Do acronyms not assist with that articulation of what one is trying to do?
No, I think it's always been a bit of an issue for us. I think SEO has never been a good description of what we do. It's always been a fairly inaccurate acronym, given that we don't actually optimize search engines. We optimize websites or have to. So I think that the term SEO has never been particularly accurate, but never more so than now in terms of, seems to be a lot of time, money and effort has been spent on debating whether or not we're still SEOs, whether SEO is dead, whether we should be called GEOs, LLMEOs. And I feel like it's a big waste of time. I think it worries me how much time we're spending talking about these things and these acronyms and not talking about what we should be doing. So I think, it's something certainly that I'm having the conversation with my clients and my team. Who cares what the acronym is? The key is the work.
So do acronyms matter more to SEOs than other marketers or other stakeholders within a business that they're trying to communicate with?
I think it really stems from this constant obsession from other channels or even from former SEOs that about it constantly being dead, or is it being called the right thing, which I think is fair in a way, but it's never gone away. And I think it's always comes back, whether or not it was after the death of link building, as it were, or penguins and pandas, the reaction to that was always, oh, right, SEO is dead. And obviously the emergence of AI has exacerbated that. So I think it is probably more a problem. I don't think there's probably many of the marketing industries that are constantly talking about whether or not their acronym is accurate. But I think what they need to be doing is obviously focusing on actually on what's going to drive growth for clients. So I think it probably is an issue that is specific to SEO, frustratingly, because it distracts from the bigger prize, really.
And obviously you have conversations with quite a few different clients. Do clients not say to you, well, how much traffic can you bring in from Google? How many links are you going to build me, and questions like that still?
Yeah, I mean, KPIs are always going to be KPIs, but I think that the problem with, the subject of this chat today, which is the acronyms, is that the clients are being distracted by that chat of being like, well, are we still investing in the right channel? Should we still be investing as much in this channel if it's dead or if it's dying? Not realizing that, actually things are just pivoting and moving. And actually there's still a huge amount of growth. If not, this has created more growth areas for clients, and it's still organic. So, I mean, obviously the better description of what we do has always been organic search, but SEO has always been that kind of that one that stuck. So yeah, I mean, it's been a busy time for consultants such as myself, because we've been answering a lot of questions, allaying a lot of fears. Essentially, the question of client is the same: is should we still be spending this money, and how so? So yeah, I think that's why good agencies and good consultants are probably more useful than ever right now, making sure that clients know they're doing the right thing or not doing the wrong things.
Yeah, I think I prefer the acronym ODO.
ODO.
Organic Discovery Optimization. So you're not reliant on search necessarily, but you can still optimize your content, your brand messaging to appear without a search, as it were, naturally appearing.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. I mean, it's still organic and it's still discovery. We've got all these extra services now that the clients can be discovered on. And, if it's going to be less searches on Google and more searches on said LLM or Google via AI mode, it's still organic search marketing. And a lot of the principles are still the same. There are new considerations. And if as an SEO, you're not ready for that change, we've had to pivot many times over the last few decades. The kind of more credible SEOs have always been up for that challenge and found that interesting. Something I was talking to a few of my peers about was, if you were a marketer who then chose SEO as your channel, I think you're probably well placed to roll with that. If you were an SEO who, kind of reluctantly worked in the marketing sector, but really just wanted to just do their kind of, SEO-y stuff then you're probably going to struggle because, it'll favor marketers who are kind of SEO focused. So yeah, I think that's a good way to look at it.
Yeah, I mean, SEO certainly does cover everything in terms of a descriptive, it's not even word acronym, whatever you want to call it. But I mean, the reality is that SEO is actually 3 times more popular than GEO as a term that's searched now. And it's probably SEOs themselves that are searching for that term. I would imagine most marketers or people within businesses aren't even considering GEO as a term.
It's misleading. I mean, if you type GEO into Google now, I mean, a lot of the results have got nothing to do with AI search, because it's an acronym that applies to other things. And also, yeah, interest in SEO it will spike for you on Google Trends because of what's been happening, and not necessarily because people are looking for a provider. And very few people looking for an SEO provider would be typing SEO into Google anyway. So it's that's always been a bit misleading. So yeah, completely. I think it's started to settle down now, but people doing those Google Trends graphs of comparing GEO to SEO to compare demand, I mean, that's not indicative of the reality, really.
Yeah, and what backs up your argument there is the fact that if you go back 5 years, if you go back to late 2020, early 2021, then the level of GEO searches by percentage is almost exactly the same. So obviously people are searching for GEO to mean something different than generative engine optimization.
Absolutely. I mean, it will have existed then, but it's certainly not in its current guise.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So that's kind of goes back to the original point, really. The acronyms are fairly, I'd say futile, it's the wrong word, are fairly useless, right? It's about how do we drive organic growth or non-reliant on paid channels for clients. SEO principles are still hugely valuable there. And, I think someone told me the other day that there's still more searches on Bing than there are in AI search, which, and most SEOs don't spend too much time optimizing for Bing. They'll be tracking it and things. But if you think that there's more people searching on that search engine that no one cares about than there are on these surfaces that we apparently are now going to take over, that may not be the case in the future. But I think it's our responsibility to optimize our clients for where the searches currently are. And we've got to be aware of the changes, but our KPIs and our contracts will be telling us to drive organic growth and conversion. And it's our job to make sure that's where those users currently are. And at the moment, the vast majority are still on those SEO channels on Google and using search engines. I'm certainly not dismissing what I like to call AI search, not GEO at all, but I see it as a kind of set of scales at the moment, whereas most of the users are still on Google. If that starts to change, we are AI friendly, we know what works, but the challenge is obviously how we optimize currently for AI search without breaking our SEO, right? Because if we were to go out and build an AI search friendly website that was completely best practice for AI search, probably wouldn't perform too well in Google, and therefore clients' revenue would probably plummet. So at the moment, it's just that balancing act, but that isn't actually what most people are doing. Most people are obsessing over these acronyms and about what it is rather than they're doing and how much client time they're spending on that. Who knows?
Okay, but the point is, it's likely still to be called SEO in 5 years' time, even if it's optimizing for organic discoverability on AI. It's still a similar kind of skill set, and it's probably still going to be called SEO because that's what it's been called for 20 or 30 years. And yeah, it's going to be still called that in 5 years plus.
I mean, the debate is it's all just SEO. I mean, I'm not saying that's 100% true because there's new disciplines and there's new things we need to be aware of technically. And, we're always adapting our technical templates and our content strategy templates, and we're always evolving how we are optimizing. And that's always been called SEO. And as I say, it's never been the perfect acronym for what we do anyway, and it still isn't. But as a service, I still believe people are looking for SEO providers in 5 years, certainly, yeah.
But the key thing is that we have to devise a holistic strategy that caters for Google's algorithms, but also LLMs and any other organic optimization opportunity that comes along in the future. So how do we future-proof our strategy to try to ensure that we do cover all the different bases?
Something to what we're doing, I'll be transparent about that. I mean, we've got a briefing system that I've been developing for, 15, 16 years, which has always been about optimizing technically and from a content perspective to make sure that, you're from an SEO perspective, ticking all the boxes. And, if you're a savvy marketer now, you've got one eye on AI search and making recommendations to optimize currently for AI search based off the information that we've been given without breaking the SEO, right? Without undoing the SEO work. And there's ways to do that. There's data sources now that you can get from Gemini. If you're looking at your fan art queries and looking at some kind of, I'm hesitant to use it as a kind of buzzword, but your trunk optimization. It's about using all those data sets to optimize for both environments without breaking the other. At the moment, the onus is very much about still be driving SEO traffic. But if you can do that whilst optimizing for the LLMs and Google AI mode using fan art query data, then obviously there is a way to do that. But as I mentioned before, if you were to create a template which was completely AI friendly, then it probably wouldn't be too good for SEO. So I think it's a future proof at the moment. It'll be about just, enhancing your briefing documents, enhancing the amount of data that we've now got more data at our disposal than we've ever had, which should be an SEO's dream, right? So we've got our traditional keyword data, we've got data from tools, and we've now got all this fan art query data, which is dead interesting, really interesting data. A lot of it overlaps and is very similar to like your people also ask data. A lot of it isn't. So we've now got more data, right? Basically to be good marketers. And if you're evolving your briefing, then you're evolving your strategies to be, in my opinion, SEO first and AI friendly, then you'll be future-proofing those websites to make sure that you're ready for that.
And obviously, because of what you've mentioned there, the fan out data, the different chunking that you can incorporate within your content, there are so many different tasks that an SEO has to do. How do they prioritize what needs to be done? Because there's almost a limitless amount of content that can be created with fan out data.
Absolutely. I think that's all about your liaison with clients, right? The best SEO strategies are where the client and the SEO consultant or SEO agency are aligned and are being pragmatic with that data as marketers. So of course, even from an SEO perspective, we've never used every single keyword from the keyword planner or every single people to ask term. But what we've done is look for the themes, look for what the user's looking for, and then optimize for that accordingly. The same principles apply with AI search, really. We've got that fan out data, and we're not going to go out the way and try and optimize for every single passage in Gemini, but we're going to highlight those trends. What can we potentially create good content for, and how do we optimize that in an AI search friendly way? So I don't feel like that principle's changed too much, really. It's in my opinion, the best SEOs are the ones that are pragmatic with data and find the most elegant way to utilize that.
Can the same bit of content be optimized really effectively for AI and also really effectively for users at the same time?
That's a really good question. I think that's the challenge. I do think it can be. I think, again, another principle that will overlap between SEO and AI is looking at search intent and actually what kind of content you're serving. So obviously, if you're very heavily informational website, this stuff's a bit easier because, you can publish quite large amounts of data and content. You can look at FAQ style stuff, which will work quite well with trunk optimization. So in that perspective, you can probably use quite a lot of data. If you're an e-com website, you're fairly limited as to what you can just kind of plonk on your website. So you need to be a bit smarter. And that's where it will be a challenge. But I do feel like, again, looking at kind of FAQ style, using the conversational kind of terms that you get for fan out queries, then the answer to that question is effectively yes. It has become trickier. But again, it just comes back to being pragmatic with that data, being a good marketer, working with the client on, right, here is that data. What is the most elegant way we can present that for SEO and for LLMs? And a lot of the time, I think the answer will be the same. Some content will work well for SEO and for LLMs, and in some cases it won't. That is the challenge. And, as it develops, it'll be interesting to see how that pans out, whether or not there'll be content served just for LLMs and content served just for search engines, or whether or not there'll be ways we can present that for both. But yeah, I think that at the moment is the interesting part.
You talked about intent there as well. How do you actually go about establishing the most likely intent for an article that you intend to produce?
Well, it's still very much the tools. I mean, that's an SEO one, really. I think a lot of the time it's obvious. When it's not obvious, you've got to go on how that results for those terms are being presented by X search engine or even your LLMs. I'm sure those tools will start to evolve. But with LLMs, obviously, a huge proportion of that traffic will be conversational and therefore informational. Until we get AI mode in the UK with, commercial grids and e-com style results, then we can't start analysing that data until we get it. But yeah, I would still very much be using my trusted SEO tools to help me, guide me in the right direction in terms of intent. Sometimes I'll disagree with that though, and, looking like a manual search to confirm that. But if you work with large sets of data, then yes, still some of the tools I've spoken about on here before work pretty well for identifying that search intent.
Charlie, what's the key takeaway from the tip you shared today?
My key takeaway is don't get distracted by the noise. Don't worry about the acronyms. Good organic search marketing is still good organic search marketing. Keep using the data, being pragmatic, and let's spend more time concentrating on growth than arguing about whether SEO is dead and chatting about acronyms.
Charlie Whitworth is lead consultant at Whitworth. Find out more over at whitworthseo.com. Charlie, thanks so much for being part of SEO in 2026.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
I've been your host, David Bain. Get your copy of SEO in 2026, the book, over at SEOin2026.com.